Hey, growth seekers. You're listening to the Limitless Man podcast. You're ready to kick off the new year with some serious self-improvement?
Absolutely.
We've got a deep dive tailored just for you,
Yeah.
pulling wisdom from chapters of some incredible audiobooks
Oh, yeah.
on success, habits, and making clear decisions.
Really good stuff.
Think of this as your cheat sheet for an awesome 2025.
It's about equipping you with actionable tools and thought-provoking perspectives. We really want you to walk away with something you can apply directly to your life.
First up, let's unpack the idea of habits and systems.
Oh.
One of the books talks about atomic habits, which is fascinating. It's this idea that tiny changes, like compound interest, build on each other over time.
It's not about making huge, sweeping changes, but rather about those small, consistent actions that compound into remarkable results. Think of it like this. If you improve just 1% each day, by the end of the year, you'll be over 37 times better than you were at the start.
That's incredible. It reminds me of Steve Martin's story.
Oh.
He spent 18 years, yes,
Wow.
you heard that right, 18 years honing his craft before he became the comedic icon we know today.
Yeah.
Talk about playing the long game.
What's fascinating here is that it highlights the difference between goals and systems.
Right.
While a goal is the destination, a system is the roadmap.
Okay.
A system-first approach is crucial for sustained progress.
So rather than focusing solely on that end goal,
Yeah.
like becoming a famous comedian,
Yeah.
Steve Martin focused on the system, writing jokes, practicing his delivery, performing every chance he got.
Right.
And the result, well, we all know how that turned out.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we actually build these systems? Another chapter we dug into breaks down the 4 stages of habit formation.
Okay.
Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Understanding this cycle is key to building better habits.
Okay.
The cue triggers the behavior. It's the signal that tells your brain it's time to act. The craving provides the motivation.
So it's like a trigger.
It is, yeah. It's the desire for the reward that the habit provides.
Right.
Then comes the response, which is the action itself. And
Yeah.
finally, the reward, which reinforces the habit and makes you want to repeat it.
Now let's shift gears and talk about how our environment plays a role in habit change.
This is where it gets really interesting. See, it's not just about willpower.
Right.
Our surroundings have a huge impact on our habits. Think about the Vietnam War and heroin addiction.
Oh, wow.
A significant percentage of soldiers were addicted to heroin while in Vietnam, but when they came home, most of them just stopped. Their environment changed, the cues disappeared,
Wow.
and the habit lost its grip.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So it's not just about trying harder, it's about setting up your surroundings for success.
Yeah.
One book mentioned the importance of making cues for good habits obvious
Yeah.
and cues for bad habits invisible.
Exactly. For instance, if you want to eat healthier,
Yeah.
make sure your kitchen is stocked with fresh fruits and vegetables
Right.
and keep those tempting junk foods out of sight. If you want to read more, leave a book on your bedside table or download an audiobook to listen to during your commute.
Makes sense.
These little environmental tweaks can make a world of difference.
So it's about understanding the power of our environment. You're being strategic about designing it.
Yeah.
One story that really stuck with me was about Patty Allwell,
Okay.
a therapist who had quit smoking decades prior.
Yes. She hadn't had a cigarette in years.
Wow.
But suddenly, while riding a horse,
Wow, really?
she experienced a powerful craving.
Oh, wow.
It turned out, years ago, she used to smoke while riding. It was fascinating.
Wow.
Her brain had held on to that encoded habit even after all those years.
That's mind-blowing. It really highlights how our brains work
Yeah,
and how certain situations can trigger deeply ingrained habits.
absolutely.
Now, how about hacking our brains?
Okay.
Specifically, that reward system.
This chapter was all about dopamine and how the anticipation of reward fuels our actions. Did you know the food industry has mastered this? Creating hyper-palatable foods that hijack our reward pathways.
No kidding. They've engineered those chips to hit that bliss point, making us crave the whole bag.
Right. It's all about understanding how dopamine drives our desires.
Right.
One technique the book suggested for working with this is temptation bundling.
Okay.
This is where you link an activity you want to do with something you need to do.
Okay.
Let's say you enjoy listening to podcasts, but struggle to make time for exercise.
Right.
You could try bundling the two, only allowing yourself to listen to your favorite podcast while working out.
That's a good idea.
Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the role of identity in making lasting change.
It's not just about changing your actions, it's about shifting your identity.
Right.
The book described it as moving beyond outcome-based changes to identity-based changes.
Interesting.
So instead of saying, I want to lose weight, you start thinking, I am a healthy person.
So it's about aligning your actions with the person you want to become.
Exactly. When your actions match your identity, change becomes more effortless. It's about asking yourself, what would a healthy person do? Or what would a successful entrepreneur do? And then acting accordingly.
Makes sense.
This shift in mindset can be incredibly powerful.
Speaking of influence, another chapter dives into how social norms impact our habits.
Oh, yeah.
We're social creatures, and our desire to belong shapes our behavior in more ways than we realize.
Absolutely. The book highlighted that we tend to imitate the habits of 3 groups.
Okay.
The close, our friends and family, the many, the general population, and the powerful, those we admire or aspire to be like.
You know, it makes perfect sense, but I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
We're constantly picking up cues from those around us.
Remember that classic experiment by Solomon Asch where people chose the wrong answer just to fit in with the group? It's a powerful demonstration of social proof. We're wired to conform, even when it means going against our better judgment.
So if you want to change your habits, it might be helpful to surround yourself with people who embody the qualities you want to cultivate.
Absolutely. Joining a culture where your desired behavior is the norm can be incredibly effective. If you're trying to get in shape, joining a running club or a gym where everyone is focused on fitness can provide that social support and motivation. The energy of the group becomes contagious.
Now, let's talk about understanding your personality and how that plays into all of this. It's like a crash course in self-discovery.
One of the books discussed the big 5 personality traits. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
So many big words.
I know, right? Knowing where you fall on the spectrum can help you build habits that truly work for you.
It's about leveraging your unique wiring for success.
Exactly.
I love this idea of finding a game where the odds are in your favor. It's about playing to your strengths.
Exactly. Some habits might come more naturally to certain personality types. The key is to understand your tendencies and work with them, not against them. For instance, if you're naturally introverted, trying to force yourself into a highly social, extroverted role might not be the best strategy for success.
That's such a great point. It's about self-awareness meeting strategy.
Now,
we've talked about building good habits, understanding our environment, even our personality types. But there's another crucial piece to this puzzle: decision fatigue.
This is a big one. It's the idea that our willpower is a finite resource. Making too many choices can drain our mental energy, leaving us more susceptible to making poor decisions.
It's like that feeling you get after spending hours configuring a laptop online. Or trying to navigate IKEA. Decision overload.
That's a great example. One of the books highlighted the power of the default bias. Our tendency to choose the presented default option, even if better options exist. Think about those pre-selected settings on websites.
Oh, I totally do that. It's easier to just go with the flow.
But sometimes the default isn't the best option. We need to be more deliberate. And then there's this brilliant concept of closing doors. Consciously choosing to not pursue certain opportunities to focus on what truly matters.
It's about simplifying and prioritizing. It reminds me of that quote: the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything.
That's a great way to put it. It's about creating clarity and saying yes to the things that truly align with your values and goals. Now let's dive into something that can be a real challenge: the fear of failure.
This one is relatable, for sure.
This section delved into the evolutionary reasons why we avoid risks. In the past, failure could mean death or social exclusion, so it's ingrained in us to prioritize safety over exploration.
That makes sense, but it can also hold us back from achieving our full potential.
Absolutely. One of the books offered some fantastic strategies for overcoming this fear. It talked about reframing failure as a learning opportunity, focusing on the process rather than the outcome, and celebrating small wins along the way.
I love the idea of reframing failure as feedback. It takes the sting out of it and helps us learn from our mistakes. Okay, moving on. Let's explore the fascinating world of mental models.
Mental models are basically frameworks for thinking.
Okay.
They're like mental shortcuts that help us make sense of complex information, make better decisions, and understand the world around us.
So they're like tools in a mental toolbox.
Exactly. The more mental models you have, the more effectively you can think. One of the books explored mental models from physics, biology, and psychology. For instance, the 80-20 principle, also known as the Pareto principle, suggests that roughly 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts.
Oh, interesting.
Understanding this can help you focus on the most impactful tasks and activities.
I'm definitely going to look into that one. Now, we all know how crucial it is to find that balance between pushing ourselves and taking a break.
Yeah.
One of the books talked about stress and recovery and how we need both to thrive.
It's like working on a muscle. You need to stress it to make it stronger.
Okay.
But you also need to give it time to rest and repair. The same goes for our minds and bodies.
Right.
Stress can be beneficial as long as it's followed by adequate recovery.
So it's about finding that rhythm of pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, but also knowing when to take a break and recharge.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about a topic that's especially relevant in today's world.
Okay.
The importance of thinking clearly and avoiding cognitive biases.
This is where we learn about all the ways our brains can trick us, right?
Precisely. Our brains are wired to take shortcuts, and these shortcuts can sometimes lead to faulty thinking.
Give us an example of a cognitive bias that we should watch out for.
One that often trips people up is the availability bias. It's where we overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, often due to vividness or recent exposure.
Okay.
For instance, if you see a news report about a shark attack, you might suddenly feel like shark attacks are more common than they actually are.
Right.
Even though statistically, you're more likely to be struck by lightning.
That's a great example. It's so easy to let those vivid images or stories skew our perception of reality.
Exactly. Another common one is the confirmation bias, where we seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs while ignoring evidence that contradicts them.
Oh, I definitely do that. It's easier to believe what we already think is true.
The key is to be aware of these biases and to actively seek out diverse perspectives. It's about challenging our assumptions and being open to new information. Now, let's talk about a concept that can be a real game changer. The importance of focusing on what truly matters and eliminating the rest.
It's about simplifying and decluttering,
Yeah.
like both mentally and physically, right?
One of the books called it Creating an Information Clean Space.
Okay.
It's about filtering out the noise and focusing on the signals that truly matter.
Right.
We're bombarded with so much information these days.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful of what we let into our minds.
Choose wisely, filter ruthlessly.
That's it.
That's a great takeaway. Now, one concept I found really intriguing was the idea of negative knowledge.
This section was fascinating. It explored the via negativa, emphasizing the importance of subtracting the bad rather than just adding the good.
Interesting.
It's about simplifying, eliminating what's not working.
So it's like saying that sometimes the best way to improve is to eliminate the things that are holding us back.
Exactly. One example was simplifying your diet.
Okay.
Instead of just adding more healthy foods, consider what you can remove.
Okay.
Processed foods, sugary drinks, excessive amounts of unhealthy fats.
Right.
Another example was reducing your exposure to negative news.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes less is more.
Absolutely. And then there's this interesting discussion about the influence of our social circles on our success and happiness. It's about the power of who we surround ourselves with.
We were just talking about social proof and conformity.
Right.
It makes sense that the people we spend time with would have a significant impact on our lives.
Right. The books we dug into really emphasize how our relationships can shape our beliefs, our behaviors, and ultimately our outcomes.
Right.
It's like that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
So true. If you want to be successful, surround yourself with successful people. If you want to be happy, surround yourself with happy people. Makes sense. Now let's talk about a topic that's often on everyone's mind.
Money.
This chapter explored the complex relationship between money and happiness.
Okay.
While money can provide security and comfort, it doesn't guarantee happiness. The research shows that once our basic needs are met,
additional wealth has a diminishing impact on our overall well-being.
We all know that money can't buy happiness, but it's still a topic worth exploring.
The book shared some interesting research on spending habits.
Okay.
For example, spending money on experiences like travel or concerts tends to bring more lasting happiness than spending on material possessions.
It makes sense. Experiences create memories, and memories last longer than stuff.
The book also highlighted the importance of aligning your spending with your values. It's about using money as a tool to support the life you want to live, rather than just chasing after more and more stuff.
Okay, now let's get a little philosophical and talk about the role of luck in our lives.
This section was pretty eye-opening.
Really?
It's about acknowledging that luck, both good and bad, plays a role in everyone's story.
Right.
We often attribute success solely to skill and effort.
Yeah.
But sometimes chance plays a bigger role than we'd like to admit.
I guess it's like saying that even the best batters don't hit a home run every time.
Exactly.
There's always an element of chance involved.
And this applies to many areas of life.
Right?
Even in fields like investing and corporate leadership.
Wow.
Luck can play a significant role.
It's humbling to think about, but also kind of liberating. Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves when things don't go as planned. There might have been factors outside of our control.
It's a reminder to be both strategic and humble. We can't control everything, but we can focus on what we can control.
Yeah.
Our effort, our choices, and our mindset. Now let's shift gears and talk about something that can really hold us back.
Okay.
The tendency to overthink and overcomplicate things.
Oh, this is definitely something I struggle with.
One of the books we read talked about embracing the twaddle tendency, which is basically the tendency to use more words than necessary.
Swaddle!
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing when we're overthinking.
Right.
And learning to cut to the chase.
I love that word.
I know.
So it's about simplifying our language and our thinking.
Exactly. The book shared some great tips for communicating more effectively, like using clear and concise language, focusing on the most important points, and avoiding jargon.
Right.
It's about getting to the heart of the matter and making it easier for others to understand your message.
Now let's dive into a concept I had never heard of before.
What's that?
Volunteer's folly.
This was a thought-provoking section. It explores how sometimes our good intentions can be counterproductive. It used the example of someone volunteering their time to build birdhouses when they could have used that time to earn money and donate it to a conservation organization.
That's such an interesting point. So it's about being strategic with our altruism.
Exactly. It's about maximizing our impact and using our skills and resources in the most effective way possible. Now, let's get to the heart of decision-making.
Okay.
Why do we often find it so difficult to let go of options, even when it's in our best interest to do so?
This is the classic paradox of choice. We're bombarded with options in every aspect of our lives.
Yes.
And while having choices is generally a good thing, too many options can lead to decision paralysis.
It's like that feeling of being overwhelmed in a grocery store aisle with 100 different kinds of cereal to choose from.
Exactly. One of the books talked about an experiment where people played a game where they had to choose between different doors, some of which led to rewards.
Right.
Sounds like a metaphor for life.
It is. And what they found was that when people were given the option to keep multiple doors open, even at a cost, they often did so. They clung to the possibility of having more choices.
Wow.
Even when it meant potentially missing out on a bigger reward.
So we're wired to crave options, even when those options are holding us back.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The takeaway here is that sometimes the key to success is not about maximizing options, but about making strategic choices and closing doors. It's about focusing our energy and attention on the things that truly matter.
I love that. It's about being decisive and trusting our instincts. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the power of traditions.
One of the books highlighted how traditions provide a sense of continuity, belonging, and meaning. They connect us to our past, create shared experiences, and pass on values to future generations. Think about those rituals we have around holidays or family gatherings. They create a sense of connection and shared identity.
It's true. Those traditions, even if they seem small, can be so powerful.
And what's interesting is that traditions don't have to be static.
Okay.
They can evolve over time, adapting to the changing needs of the culture.
So it's not about rigidly clinging to the past.
Right.
It's about honoring the spirit of the tradition while allowing it to evolve. Now let's talk about something that can be both persuasive and manipulative: propaganda.
This section was all about the psychology of persuasion and how easily our beliefs can be influenced by subtle or not so subtle messages.
It's pretty scary to think about how much our thoughts and opinions are shaped by forces outside of our control.
One of the books discussed a fascinating phenomenon called the sleeper effect. It's the idea that while we might initially dismiss information from a source we consider untrustworthy, over time, the message itself can take root in our minds, even if we forget where we heard it.
So it's like a delayed reaction to propaganda. That is kind of unsettling.
It highlights how important it is to be critical thinkers and to evaluate information carefully, regardless of the source. We can't just blindly accept everything we hear or read.
Now let's talk about something that we all rely on,
but
that can be surprisingly unreliable: memory.
One of the books delved into how our memories are not always as accurate as we think they are. Our brains tend to rewrite history, subtly altering our memories to fit our current beliefs and perceptions.
It's like our brains are trying to protect our egos by making us believe that we've always been right.
It's a fascinating phenomenon. The takeaway here is to be humble about our own memories and to be open to the possibility that we might not always remember things accurately. We can't always trust our own recollections.
Okay, time for a reality check. Are we really as rational as we think we are?
This section challenged the idea that humans are primarily rational decision makers. The reality is that our emotions, biases, and past experiences can often override logic.
So we're not always in control as we think we are.
Exactly. The takeaway here is to be aware of our own irrational tendencies and to develop strategies for making more objective decisions. We need to be mindful of our emotions and not let them hijack our choices. Now, one of the books had a section on the power of the default. Why do we stick with the status quo, even when it might not be the best option?
This is the default bias at play again, is that tendency to choose the presented default option just because it's easier and more familiar. I'm definitely guilty of that. It's so much simpler to just go with the flow. But sometimes we need to shake things up.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that this bias can have a big impact on our choices. What we buy, how we invest our money, even our health choices.
So we need to be more aware of the defaults in our lives and to question whether they're truly serving us.
Exactly. Sometimes the best choice is to opt out of the default and create our own path. Now let's talk about an emotion that can be a powerful motivator, but also a source of a lot of pain: regret.
This one is always a tough one to grapple with.
This section really delved into the psychology of regret and how our fear of making the wrong decision can influence our behavior. It's interesting that we often regret the things we do more than the things we don't do. Especially when our choices set us apart from the crowd.
So we're more afraid of standing out and being wrong than blending in and potentially missing out? I've never thought about it that way.
It's a powerful insight into human nature. We're wired to avoid regret, even if it means playing it safe and conforming to social norms. But sometimes the most fulfilling path involves taking risks and embracing the unknown.
That's such a good point. So how do we overcome this fear of regret and make decisions that are truly aligned with our hearts?
It's about being aware of our tendency to avoid regret and to make decisions based on what we truly believe is best, even if it means taking a risk or going against the grain. It's about trusting our own judgment and not letting the fear of potential regret hold us back.
I love that. It's about being bold and trusting our own inner compass. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of habit formation. One of the books had a section on implementation intentions. What are those all about?
Implementation intentions are a powerful tool for turning good intentions into concrete actions. It's about creating a specific plan for when and where you'll perform a particular habit.
So instead of just saying, I'm going to exercise more, you'd say something like, I'm going to go for a run every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m.
Exactly. The book discussed how this simple strategy significantly increases the likelihood of following through. It's about removing the guesswork and making it easier to stick to your plan.
It's like you're giving yourself a clear set of instructions to follow. So you don't have to rely on willpower or motivation alone. Now let's talk about something that can help keep us accountable. Tracking our progress.
This section emphasized how tracking our habits can help us stay motivated, identify areas for improvement, and see how far we've come. It's like keeping a scorecard for our habits.
It's about making the invisible visible.
The book shared some great tips for tracking effectively, such as using a habit tracker, setting realistic goals,
Right.
and focusing on consistency over perfection.
Okay.
Small, consistent actions can lead to big results over time.
Makes sense.
Now, have you heard of the 2-minute rule?
I have, but tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah.
It's a simple but effective strategy for overcoming procrastination and making it easier to start new habits, right?
Exactly. The idea is to break down any habit into a task that can be completed in 2 minutes or less.
Right.
So instead of trying to write a whole chapter,
Yeah.
you commit to writing for just 2 minutes.
So tricking your brain into getting started.
It's about lowering the barrier to entry. And once you've overcome that initial inertia,
Right.
it's often easier to keep going.
I love that. Now, let's talk about something that's often overlooked, but incredibly important.
Okay.
Celebrating our wins.
This section focused on acknowledging and rewarding ourselves for our progress, no matter how small.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing our efforts and giving ourselves a pat on the back for a job well done.
Celebrating those small victories can be a powerful motivator, right?
Absolutely. The book suggested taking a break,
Yeah.
enjoying a favorite activity,
Oh.
or sharing your accomplishments with friends or family. It's about reinforcing those positive behaviors and creating positive associations with the process of change.
Okay, let's talk about a concept that's often talked about in the context of success.
Okay.
Delaying gratification. It's all about resisting the temptation to indulge in immediate pleasure.
Right.
And instead focusing on long-term rewards.
It's a skill that's essential for achieving long-term goals,
Right.
whether it's in academics, finances, or relationships. It's like that famous marshmallow experiment
Oh, yeah.
where kids who could resist eating a marshmallow immediately were rewarded with 2 marshmallows later.
Yeah.
Those who could delay gratification ended up having better outcomes in life.
That's a classic experiment. So how do we strengthen our willpower muscles and become better at delaying gratification?
The books suggested setting clear goals,
Okay.
visualizing those future rewards,
Right.
and practicing mindfulness. It's about training our brains to prioritize long-term satisfaction
Right.
over short-term temptation.
Okay, let's get practical. What are some strategies for breaking bad habits?
These chapters explored a variety of techniques, from identifying triggers to creating accountability systems to changing our environment.
It's like a multi-pronged approach to tackling those unwanted behaviors.
Exactly. Breaking bad habits requires patience, persistence, and self-compassion. It's a process, not a quick fix. And one thing that can be incredibly helpful is forgiveness.
Forgiveness. In the context of breaking bad habits.
It's about recognizing that we all make mistakes. Beating ourselves up over slip-ups will only make it harder to get back on track. It's about giving ourselves permission to be human, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep moving forward.
That's such an important point. We need to be kind to ourselves, especially when we're trying to change ingrained behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay, time for another reality check. Are we really as rational as we think we are?
This section debunked the myth of the rational human being. Our emotions, biases, and past experiences often cloud our judgment.
So we're not always in control as we think we are.
Precisely. It's about being aware of our irrational tendencies and developing strategies for making more objective decisions. We need to learn to recognize when our emotions are driving the bus and to find ways to step back and assess the situation more objectively.
Now, one of the books talked about the importance of questioning our assumptions.
This is about challenging the status quo and looking at things from a different perspective. Our assumptions can limit our thinking and prevent us from seeing new possibilities, like that saying, the only thing that's constant is change.
So true. If we want to grow and evolve, we need to be willing to question our assumptions and to be open to new perspectives. Now, one of the books had a chapter on curiosity. It might seem like an obvious one, but why is curiosity so crucial?
The books explored how curiosity can help us learn new things, solve problems more effectively, and live more fulfilling lives. It's about being open to new experiences, asking questions, and challenging ourselves to step outside of our comfort zones. And the great thing is that curiosity is a skill that can be cultivated.
So how do we become more curious?
The book suggested asking more questions, seeking out new experiences, and embracing uncertainty. It's about approaching life with a sense of wonder and a thirst for knowledge. Now let's talk about something that can be both a blessing and a curse: the power of expectations.
Our expectations can shape our reality in profound ways. Our beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world around us influence our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we believe something will happen, we often act in ways that make it more likely to come true.
If you believe you're going to have a bad day, You might unconsciously sabotage yourself. If you believe you're capable of achieving great things, you're more likely to put in the effort to make it happen.
Exactly.
So it's crucial to be aware of our expectations and to challenge those that are limiting or negative.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating a more positive and empowering mindset. Now let's talk about one of my favorite topics, the power of small wins.
It's all about celebrating those small victories along the way to achieving bigger goals.
Yeah.
Those little wins can keep us motivated and build momentum.
Exactly. And our brains are wired to respond positively to progress no matter how small. Even something as simple as checking off a task on our to-do list can give us a little dopamine hit and encourage us to keep going.
So celebrate those small wins and use them as fuel to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Now, have you ever experienced that feeling of being completely absorbed in an activity where time seems to fly by and you're performing at your best? That's flow state.
It's like being in the zone, right?
Exactly. The books described it as being characterized by a sense of challenge, clear goals, immediate feedback, and a feeling of control.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where we're challenged but not overwhelmed.
Precisely. And the good news is that we can create the conditions to enter flow state more often. Choose activities that align with your skills and interests, set clear goals, eliminate distractions, and practice mindfulness. It's about creating the optimal environment for peak performance.
Now let's talk about something that's especially prevalent in today's world. The fear of missing out, or FOMO. It's that feeling of anxiety that we're missing out on something exciting or important.
Social media has definitely amplified this fear. We're constantly bombarded with images of other people's seemingly perfect lives. It's easy to fall into the comparison trap and feel inadequate.
I think we all struggle with this to some degree. It's hard not to compare ourselves to others, especially when we're constantly being exposed to their highlight reels.
One of the books offered some really helpful advice for overcoming FOMO. It suggested practicing gratitude, focusing on our own values and goals, and limiting our exposure to social media.
It's about choosing to focus on what we have rather than what we lack. It's about being present and appreciating the beauty of our own lives rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others. Now, we've talked about the importance of saying no, but what about the power of saying yes?
It's not just about saying no to things that don't serve us. It's also about saying yes to the right opportunities. It's about being discerning and choosing the opportunities that will help us grow and move forward.
So it's about aligning our choices with our values and goals. Now let's dive into something that's both fascinating and a bit mysterious: the power of the subconscious mind.
One of the books we read explored the idea that so much of our behavior is driven by forces that we're not even aware of. Our past experiences, our beliefs, our emotions, they all influence our thoughts, feelings, and actions in ways that we don't fully understand.
It's like there's a hidden part of our brain that's calling the shots.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? But it can also be empowering. It means that we have the potential to change our lives by changing our subconscious beliefs.
So it's about being curious about our own inner workings. It's about understanding that there might be more going on beneath the surface than we realize.
Absolutely. And there are tools and techniques we can use to tap into the power of our subconscious mind, like affirmations, visualization, and hypnotherapy.
Now, one of the books had a whole section on the importance of building strong relationships.
Oh, yeah? That's crucial.
It's about investing in those connections and nurturing those bonds.
Absolutely. Strong social connections lead to increased happiness, better health, and greater resilience. We need those supportive relationships to thrive.
So how do we build and maintain strong relationships?
The book emphasized the importance of being present, communicating effectively, showing appreciation, and offering support. It's about making an effort to stay connected, to listen attentively, and to be there for each other both in good times and bad.
Okay, let's get to the heart of decision-making. Why do we often find it so difficult to let go of options, even when it's in our best interest to do so?
It's the paradox of choice. We think more options mean more freedom, but too many choices can actually lead to anxiety and indecision.
It's like that feeling of being overwhelmed in a restaurant with a 10-page menu. You end up spending more time agonizing over what to order than actually enjoying the meal.
Exactly. And the research shows that we're often happier with our choices when we have fewer options to choose from.
So sometimes simplifying and streamlining our choices can actually lead to greater satisfaction. Now, one of the books had a chapter on the power of perspective. It might seem like a simple concept, but how does our perspective impact our habits?
It shapes our reality in more ways than we realize. Our perspective influences our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and it can even impact our habits.
Give us an example.
Let's say you're trying to exercise more. If you view exercise as a chore or a punishment, you're less likely to stick with it. But if you see it as a way to care for your body, to boost your energy and mood, or to challenge yourself, you're more likely to make it a regular habit.
So it's about changing our mindset and shifting our perspective to create lasting change.
Absolutely.
Now, we've talked a lot about gathering knowledge and information.
Yeah.
But what's the key to turning that knowledge into real-world results?
It's action. As one of the books emphasized, knowledge is only powerful when it's put into practice.
We can read all the self-help books in the world, but if we don't actually apply what we learn, it's all for nothing. So what are some tips for taking action?
The book suggested setting clear goals, creating action plans, breaking down those goals into smaller steps, and holding ourselves accountable. It's about moving from thinking to doing.
And along with taking action, we also need to be persistent.
Right.
Because let's face it, achieving meaningful change takes time and effort.
Absolutely. The books we read highlighted how persistence is often the key to achieving long-term goals. It's not about being perfect. It's about keeping going even when things get tough. It's about embracing the journey and trusting the process.
It's about having that grit and determination to keep pushing forward even when we encounter setbacks or obstacles. Now let's talk about a topic that's close to my heart, finding our purpose. It's about figuring out why we're here and what we're meant to do.
Having a sense of purpose can give our lives meaning and direction. It can fuel our passions and guide our decisions.
So how do we discover our purpose?
One of the books suggested reflecting on our values, exploring our interests, and identifying our strengths. It's about looking inward and asking ourselves those big questions. What am I passionate about? What makes me feel alive? What kind of impact do I want to make on the world?
Those are great questions to ponder. It's about connecting with our authentic selves and aligning our actions with our values. Now, we've talked about achieving our goals and finding our purpose, but we also need to take care of ourselves along the way.
Right.
Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential.
Absolutely. The books we read emphasize the importance of self-care for our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. It's about nurturing ourselves and filling our own cups so we can show up as our best selves.
So what are some practical ways we can practice self-care?
The book suggested prioritizing sleep, nourishing our bodies with healthy foods, moving our bodies regularly, spending time in nature, and engaging in activities that bring us joy and relaxation. It's about creating habits that support our overall well-being.
Now let's talk about something that could be a real game changer. The power of mindset. Our mindset or our beliefs and attitudes can have a huge impact on our experiences.
It's about understanding that our thoughts have power. If we believe we can do something, we're more likely to succeed. If we believe we're limited, we'll create self-imposed barriers. It's all about cultivating a positive and empowering mindset.
So how do we develop a more positive mindset?
The books offered some really valuable advice. They talked about practicing gratitude, focusing on our strengths, reframing challenges as opportunities, and using affirmations to reprogram our subconscious beliefs. It's about choosing to see the good in ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, now let's get real about something we all experience, making mistakes.
Oh yeah, we all make them.
It's part of being human. But how do we move forward and learn from those inevitable blunders?
One of the books emphasized the importance of seeing failure as a learning opportunity. It's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about embracing them and valuable feedback.
It's about having a growth mindset, that belief that we can learn and grow from our experiences, both positive and negative.
Exactly. It's about viewing challenges as stepping stones, not roadblocks. Now, let's talk about something that can be both exhilarating and terrifying. Change. It's a constant in life, and our ability to adapt is crucial.
Change can be challenging, but it's also essential for growth. How do we become more comfortable with change and embrace it as a positive force?
The book suggested focusing on the potential benefits of change, cultivating a growth mindset, and seeking support from others. It's about reframing change as an opportunity for growth and renewal.
That's a great way to look at it. Now let's talk about something that could be a real trap of comfort zones. They might feel safe and cozy, but they can also limit our potential.
It's that old saying, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. If we want to grow and expand, we need to step outside those comfortable boundaries.
But stepping outside of our comfort zones can feel scary. What are some tips for doing it in a way that feels manageable?
The book suggested setting small, achievable goals, challenging ourselves to try new things, and seeking out support from others. It's about gradually expanding those boundaries and celebrating our courage along the way. Now let's talk about something that's incredibly empowering: taking ownership of our lives.
It's about recognizing that we are the authors of our own stories. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to life's challenges.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have agency. We can choose to respond to life's curveballs with grace and resilience. We can choose to learn and grow from our experiences.
It's about being proactive and creating the life we want, rather than just letting life happen to us.
Absolutely. And it starts with taking responsibility for our choices and our actions. We can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it.
Now let's talk about a practice that's been getting a lot of attention lately: mindfulness. It's about being present in this moment, rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
It's about bringing our attention to the here and now without judgment.
It's so easy to get caught up in the mental chatter and to lose sight of the beauty of the present moment.
The books we read emphasized how mindfulness can help us reduce stress, increase our happiness, and appreciate the simple joys of life.
So how do we cultivate mindfulness in our daily lives?
They suggested practicing meditation, paying attention to our breath, engaging in mindful activities like walking or eating, and simply making a conscious effort to be present in each moment.
Okay, now for a topic that's closely tied to mindfulness: gratitude.
Oh, gratitude is a game changer.
It's about appreciating the good things in our lives, both big and small.
Gratitude is a powerful emotion. It can shift our focus from what we lack to what we have, increasing our happiness and well-being.
So how do we cultivate more gratitude in our lives?
The books suggested keeping a gratitude journal, expressing appreciation to others, and simply taking the time to savor positive experiences.
Now let's talk about something that's essential for success in all areas of life: effective communication. It's about conveying our message clearly, listening attentively, and building strong connections with others.
The books highlighted the importance of both verbal and nonverbal communication. It's about using our words carefully, paying attention to our body language, and being mindful of our tone of voice.
It's also about being a good listener.
Absolutely. Active listening is crucial for effective communication. It's about truly hearing and understanding what the other person is saying, both verbally and non-verbally.
It's about creating a space of understanding and respect. Now let's talk about what drives us to do the things we do. Motivation. What makes us tick?
One of the books explored the different types of motivation, including intrinsic motivation, which comes from within, and extrinsic motivation, which comes from external rewards or punishments.
So it's about understanding what motivates us personally, what gets us excited and energized.
Exactly. And the book offered some great tips for cultivating motivation. It talked about setting clear goals, identifying our values, and finding activities that align with our passions. It's about finding that sweet spot where our work feels both meaningful and enjoyable.
Now, one of the books had a section on self-belief. Why is believing in ourselves so important?
Our beliefs about ourselves shape our reality. If we believe we can do something, we're more likely to put in the effort and to persevere through challenges. If we believe we're limited, we'll create self-imposed barriers that prevent us from reaching our full potential.
It's like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. Our beliefs become our reality, so it's essential to cultivate self-belief.
What are some ways we can build that unshakable belief in ourselves?
The book suggested setting realistic goals, celebrating our successes, and surrounding ourselves with supportive people who believe in us. It's also about recognizing our strengths and acknowledging our accomplishments.
Now, let's talk about a skill that's essential for healthy relationships and for protecting our own well-being: setting boundaries. It's about knowing our limits and communicating them clearly to others.
It's about protecting our time, our energy, and our emotional well-being. It's about saying no to things that don't align with our values or our goals.
Setting boundaries can be difficult, especially for people who are used to people-pleasing or putting others' needs before their own. What are some tips for setting boundaries effectively?
The books emphasize the importance of identifying our non-negotiables, those things that we're absolutely not willing to compromise on. It's also about communicating our needs clearly and assertively, and enforcing those boundaries consistently.
It's about respecting ourselves and teaching others how to treat us. Now let's delve into the world of leadership. What makes a great leader?
It's not just about holding a position of power, it's about inspiring and empowering others to achieve a shared vision.
It's about inspiring and guiding others, about creating a shared vision and working together to achieve it.
The books we read explored different leadership styles, as well as the qualities that are essential for effective leadership. They talked about the importance of communication, trust, empowerment, and collaboration.
It's about creating a positive and supportive environment where everyone feels valued and respected.
Exactly. It's about leading by example, setting high standards, and fostering a culture of excellence and integrity.
And now, one of the books had a chapter on emotional intelligence, which has become an increasingly important topic in the workplace and in life in general.
Oh, absolutely. Emotional intelligence is key.
Emotional intelligence, what exactly is that?
It's our ability to understand and manage emotions, both our own and those of others. It's about being aware of our emotions, being able to regulate them effectively, and being able to empathize with others.
So it's about having those soft skills that are so crucial for building strong relationships, navigating conflict, and communicating effectively.
Exactly. And the good news is that emotional intelligence is a skill that can be developed.
Now, we've talked about mindset earlier, but there's a specific type of mindset that's been getting a lot of attention lately: the growth mindset. It's the belief that our abilities are not fixed, but that we can learn and grow throughout our lives.
A growth mindset is essential for success in all areas of life. It allows us to embrace challenges, learn from our mistakes, and persevere through setbacks.
So how do we cultivate a growth mindset?
The book suggested embracing challenges as opportunities for growth, reframing setbacks as learning experiences, and seeking out feedback to identify areas for improvement. It's about shifting our perspective from "I can't do this" to "I can learn how to do this."
Now let's talk about something that can be scary, but that's also essential for growth: taking risks. It's about stepping outside of our comfort zones and challenging ourselves to try new things.
Taking risks doesn't mean being reckless. It's about calculated risks, assessing the potential risks and rewards, developing a plan, and being prepared to learn from the experience, whether it's a success or a failure.
It's about embracing the unknown and seeing it as an opportunity for growth and adventure. Now let's talk about something that can bring a lot of joy and satisfaction to our lives: finding work that we love.
Ah, yes, that's the dream, isn't it?
It's about finding that sweet spot where our passions and skills align.
The books we read offered some great advice for finding work that lights us up. They talked about reflecting on our values, exploring our interests, identifying our strengths, and seeking out opportunities that align with our unique gifts and talents.
It's about making a living doing something that we truly enjoy, something that makes us feel alive and energized. Now let's get practical and talk about something that's always a challenge: time management. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but some people seem to get so much more done. What's their secret?
The books we read explored a variety of tools and techniques for managing time effectively. They talked about the importance of prioritizing tasks, setting deadlines, eliminating distractions, and breaking down large projects into smaller, more manageable steps.
It's about being intentional with our time and focusing on the things that truly matter. Now, we've talked about the importance of saying no, but we also need to make sure we're saying yes to the right opportunities.
Exactly. Saying yes to the right opportunities can open doors to amazing experiences, new relationships, and exciting possibilities.
So how do we know which opportunities are worth saying yes to?
The book suggested considering whether the opportunity aligns with your values, your goals, and your aspirations. It's about choosing to invest your time and energy in the things that will bring you closer to the life you want to create.
Now let's talk about goal setting again. We've talked about setting SMART goals and stretch goals, but are there any other tips for setting goals that we're more likely to achieve?
One of the books talked about the importance of aligning our goals with our values.
It's about making sure our goals are meaningful to us, not just something we feel like we should be doing.
Exactly. When our goals are aligned with our values, we're more likely to be motivated to achieve them. We'll feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment in pursuing them.
Now let's talk about something that can be a real trap: the tendency to compare ourselves to others. It's so easy to fall into the comparison game, especially in today's world of social media.
It's so true. It's like we're constantly bombarded with images of other people's perfect lives, their amazing vacations, their dream jobs, their seemingly effortless success. It's easy to get caught up in that and feel like we're not measuring up.
Right, and it's important to remember that we're only seeing a carefully curated snapshot of their lives.
Yeah.
We don't see the struggles, the setbacks, the behind-the-scenes effort that goes into creating those picture-perfect moments.
Exactly.
So how do we break free from that comparison trap?
The books emphasize the importance of focusing on our own journey rather than comparing ourselves to others. It's about celebrating our own unique strengths and accomplishments rather than feeling envious or inadequate when we see other people's successes.
It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own path and that there's no right or wrong way to live life.
Absolutely. We each have our own unique journey to travel, and comparing ourselves to others only distracts us from our own path.
Now let's talk about something that's essential for both physical and mental well-being: sleep. We all know we need enough sleep, but it's so easy to sacrifice sleep for work or other commitments.
It is, and it's a shame because sleep is so crucial for our health and well-being.
It's like we wear our lack of sleep as a badge of honor, but it's really doing us more harm than good.
The books we read highlighted the numerous benefits of getting enough sleep: improved mood, better cognitive function, increased energy levels, a stronger immune system, and even a reduced risk of chronic diseases.
So making sleep a priority is really an act of self-care and an investment in our long-term health and well-being.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Simple things like establishing a regular sleep schedule, creating a relaxing bedtime routine, and making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool can make a big difference.
Now let's talk about that feeling of being overwhelmed. It's like having too much on our plates, too many demands on our time and energy.
It's a common experience these days. We're constantly bombarded with information, stimulation, and demands on our attention. It's easy to feel like we're drowning in it all.
It can feel like we're drowning in to-do lists and responsibilities.
The books we read offer some really helpful strategies for managing overwhelm. They talked about prioritizing tasks, setting boundaries, delegating responsibilities, and practicing mindfulness to stay grounded and centered.
It's about taking back control and creating a sense of order in our lives. Now let's talk about something we do every day, often without even realizing it: making decisions. Big or small, our choices shape our lives.
It's true. Every decision we make, from what we eat for breakfast to what career path we choose, has an impact on our lives.
So how do we make sure we're making decisions that are aligned with our values and our goals?
The books emphasize the importance of making conscious, deliberate choices rather than just reacting to situations. It's about being intentional about our decisions and making sure they align with our values and our goals.
So it's about being proactive rather than reactive. It's about taking control of our lives and steering ourselves in the direction we want to go.
Exactly. And it starts with being aware of the decisions we're making, both big and small. We need to ask ourselves, is this choice aligned with my values? Is it moving me closer to my goals?
That's a great point. Yeah. It's about being mindful of our choices and making sure they're serving us well. Now, one of the books had a chapter on the power of action. It's about recognizing that knowledge is only powerful when it's put into practice.
It's so true. We can read all the self-help books and listen to all the podcasts in the world, but if we don't actually take action, nothing will change.
We can read all the self-help books and listen to all the podcasts in the world, but if we don't actually take action, nothing will change. So what are some tips for moving from thinking to doing?
The books offered some great advice for taking action. They talked about setting clear goals, creating action plans, breaking down those goals into smaller, more manageable steps, and holding ourselves accountable for following through. It's about moving from thinking to doing.
And along with taking action, we also need to cultivate persistence. Because let's be honest, achieving meaningful change takes time, effort, and a lot of determination.
Persistence is key. It's about not giving up on our dreams, even when we face setbacks or challenges. It's about embracing the journey and trusting the process.
It's about having that grit and determination to keep moving forward one step at a time. Now let's talk about something that can bring a lot of meaning and fulfillment to our lives: finding our purpose. It's about figuring out why we're here and what we're meant to do.
It's a question that has puzzled philosophers and thinkers for centuries, and the truth is there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Our purpose is unique to each of us, and it can evolve over time.
So how do we go about discovering our purpose?
The books we read emphasize that finding our purpose isn't always a grand, earth-shattering revelation. Sometimes it's about paying attention to those quiet whispers in our hearts, to the things that light us up and make us feel truly alive.
So it's about exploring our passions, our interests, and our values. It's about paying attention to what brings us joy and fulfillment.
Exactly. And remember, our purpose can evolve over time. It's not a static destination, but rather a journey of self-discovery.
Okay, we've talked a lot about achieving goals, building habits, and making decisions. But we also need to talk about something that's essential for our well-being: taking care of ourselves.
Self-care is not selfish, it's essential. It's about prioritizing our physical, mental, and emotional health so we can show up as our best selves in the world.
It's about filling our own cups so we have something to give to others.
Exactly. The books offered some great advice for practicing self-care. They talked about prioritizing sleep, eating nourishing foods, moving our bodies, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, and engaging in activities that bring us joy.
It's about creating a life that feels both meaningful and sustainable. Now let's revisit the topic of mindset. We've talked about having a growth mindset, but what about cultivating a positive mindset in general?
Our mindset is so powerful. It can influence our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and it can even impact our physical health.
So how can we develop a more positive and empowering mindset?
The books we read emphasized the power of positive thinking. They talked about the importance of focusing on our strengths, practicing gratitude, reframing challenges as opportunities, and using affirmations to reprogram our subconscious beliefs.
It's about choosing to see the good in ourselves and the world around us. It's about focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on problems.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we have the power to choose our thoughts and to create a more positive and fulfilling reality for ourselves. The books we read offered some really helpful strategies for managing overwhelm. They talked about prioritizing tasks, setting boundaries, delegating responsibilities, and practicing mindfulness to stay grounded and centered.
It's about taking back control and creating a sense of order in our lives. Now let's talk about something we do every day, often without even realizing it: making decisions. Big or small, our choices shape our lives.
The books emphasize the importance of making conscious, deliberate choices, rather than just reacting to situations. It's about being intentional about our decisions and making sure they align with our values and our goals.
So it's about being proactive rather than reactive. It's about taking control of our lives and steering ourselves in the direction we want to go.
Exactly. Now, one of the books had a chapter on the power of action. It's about recognizing that knowledge is only powerful when it's put into practice.
We can read all the self-help books and listen to all the podcasts in the world, but if we don't actually take action, nothing will change.
The books offered some great advice for taking action. They talked about setting clear goals, creating action plans, breaking down those goals into smaller, more manageable steps, and holding ourselves accountable for following through. It's about moving from thinking to doing.
And along with taking action, we also need to cultivate persistence. Because, let's be honest, achieving meaningful change takes time, effort, and a lot of determination.
Persistence is key. It's about not giving up on our dreams, even when we face setbacks or challenges.
It's about having that grit and determination to keep moving forward one step at a time. Now let's talk about something that can bring a lot of meaning and fulfillment to our lives: finding our purpose. It's about figuring out why we're here and what we're meant to do.
The books we read emphasize that finding our purpose isn't always a grand, earth-shattering revelation. Sometimes it's about paying attention to those quiet whispers in our hearts, to the things that light us up and make us feel truly alive.
So it's about exploring our passions, our interests, and our values. It's about paying attention to what brings us joy and fulfillment.
Exactly. And remember, our purpose can evolve over time. It's not a static destination, but rather a journey of self-discovery.
Okay, we've talked a lot about achieving goals, building habits, and making decisions. But we also need to talk about something that's essential for our well-being: taking care of ourselves.
Self-care is not selfish, it's essential. It's about prioritizing our physical, mental, and emotional health so we can show up as our best selves in the world.
It's about filling our own cups so we have something to give to others.
Exactly. The books offered some great advice for practicing self-care. They talked about prioritizing sleep, eating nourishing foods, moving our bodies, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, and engaging in activities that bring us joy.
It's about creating a life that feels both meaningful and sustainable. Now let's revisit the topic of mindset. We've talked about having a growth mindset, but what about cultivating a positive mindset in general?
The books we read emphasize the power of positive thinking. They talked about the importance of focusing on our strengths, practicing gratitude, reframing challenges as opportunities, and using affirmations to reprogram our subconscious beliefs.
It's about choosing to see the good in ourselves and the world around us. It's about focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on problems.
One book even mentioned the impact our mindset has on our physical health. Studies show that optimists tend to live longer and healthier lives than pessimists.
That's incredible. I'm definitely going to work on cultivating a more positive outlook. So much of this boils down to being more deliberate and mindful. It's about recognizing that we have choices in how we think, feel, and behave.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight. Be patient with yourself, celebrate the small wins, and keep moving forward.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the power of atomic habits to the importance of self-care and everything in between. What are some key takeaways you think our listeners should walk away with?
I think it's essential to remember that we all have the power to create the lives we want. It starts with a decision, a commitment to growth, a willingness to learn and evolve, and a belief in our own potential.
Yeah, it's such a powerful message. So for our growth seekers out there looking ahead to 2025, what's one tip for success they can start implementing today?
Be intentional with your information consumption. We're bombarded with so much information these days, much of it designed to distract us or keep us in a state of fear or anxiety. Choose wisely what you allow into your mind.
So true. Choose wisely, filter ruthlessly. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about. Any final thoughts for our growth seekers?
We've covered a lot of ground, from habits to mindset to decision-making. But perhaps the most important takeaway is this: you have the power to create the life you want. It starts with a decision, a commitment to growth, and a willingness to put in the work.
Beautifully said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, growth seekers, this is just the beginning. Take these insights, apply them to your life, and watch what happens. We believe in you. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Write your comments, questions, and maybe the things you are struggling with. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and please share it with your family, your friends, or anyone. Be the best version of yourself.